I'm Kim.
I'm sitting in my small, sunlit River North apartment, the quiet of the place wrapping around me like a warm blanket. My hand rests gently on my growing belly, and I can feel the faint flutter of life inside. It's a far cry from the chaos and heartbreak I endured not too long ago. I remember the day the storm hit my life like it was yesterday. It was a cold Wednesday morning, and I watched from the hallway mirror as federal agents delivered a summons to my now ex-husband, Jake. His face drained of color as the lead agent informed him that he was required to appear for questioning regarding financial misconduct, falsified business records, and tax irregularities associated with his advertising agency. Jake stammered, insisting it was a misunderstanding. But I knew better. I had seen the evidence with my own eyes. As he followed the agents out of the apartment like a man walking into his own shadow, I felt a strange mix of emotions. It was a relief, not exactly. It was more like a heavy acceptance of an ending I never wanted but knew was coming. Let me take you back to how it all started. I had been married to Jake for 10 long years. We met in our early 20s, both full of dreams and hopes. Jake was ambitious, and he had a vision of building a successful advertising agency. I supported him every step of the way, even through the long nights and the countless fertility treatments we endured in our quest to have a child. After a decade of disappointment, the news finally came one morning. I was 4 weeks pregnant. It was a miracle, a dream come true after years of heartbreak. I spent the entire afternoon rehearsing in my head how I would tell Jake. He had been so preoccupied with his company's upcoming celebration at the Grand City Hotel. It seemed like the perfect setting for such a special reveal. I rented a simple black catering uniform. Anonymity was key. I didn't want him to see me too soon and ruin the surprise. I tucked my hair into a low bun, applied light makeup, and slipped the pregnancy confirmation envelope into the inside pocket of my blazer. As I whispered to my reflection, "Tonight you'll finally know," little did I know that my world was about to shatter. When I arrived at the hotel, the lobby was ablaze with golden light reflecting off the beautiful ceiling murals. Guests in evening gowns and tailored suits filtered in, exuding the confidence that comes from years of building successful careers in the competitive New York corporate scene. I kept my head down and made my way to the service entrance. No one questioned my presence, which was exactly what I needed. Inside the grand ballroom, the celebration was in full swing. Jazz music filled the air, and guests were networking, laughing, and toasting to another milestone for Jake's agency. I scanned the crowd for Jake and spotted him near the center of the room. He was impeccably dressed in a charcoal, gray suit, but something about him felt off. He wasn't his usual charming self. Instead of mingling with clients and colleagues, he stood with a drink in hand, his gaze fixed on the ballroom entrance. His fingers drummed lightly against the glass, a sign of his anxiety. Every time a new guest entered, he would straighten up, only to slump back with a look of disappointment. I tried to brush off my unease. I told myself that he was just stressed from work. His company was expanding, and he had been chasing a new partnership for months. Maybe he was expecting an investor or a colleague. But as I got closer, my hope began to flicker. Then, the ballroom doors opened again, and a young woman entered. She was no more than 22, with an air of confidence that came from a lifetime of privilege. Her silver satin dress shimmered under the chandelier lights, and her hair was styled in effortless waves. She moved with the grace of someone raised in exclusive private schools and accustomed to being the center of attention. Her name was Lily, the daughter of a powerful real estate mogul, Mr.
Thompson.
I recognized her from the articles Jake had shown me months ago when he first mentioned the possibility of collaborating with the Thompson family. At the time, it had sounded like a business opportunity. Landing the Thompsons could change everything for his agency. But he had never mentioned meeting Lily. The moment Lily entered, Jake's entire demeanor changed. He set down his drink without looking and rushed towards her with unrestrained eagerness. His smile, which I hadn't seen directed at me in months, spread across his face. He placed a hand on the small of her back, and she beamed up at him, her hand lingering on his forearm. I felt my fingers tighten around the stem of the champagne flute I was adjusting. I tried not to stare, but the scene in front of me was too intimate, too undeniable. As I got closer, I overheard whispers from nearby tables. "They look perfect together," one woman said. "It's been going on for months," another replied. My heart slammed against my ribs. I replayed the words in my mind, hoping I had misheard. But the whispers continued. I edged closer and heard more. "Lily's dad practically owns half of Manhattan. If Jake plays this right, his agency could become the top in the city."
Exactly.
"Mr. Thompson has connections everywhere. If Jake becomes family, the doors will just open." It all started to make sense. Jake's distance, his late nights, his sudden obsession with image and prestige. He wasn't just ambitious. He was using Lily and her family's influence to climb the social ladder. I was no longer a part of his future. I followed them to a more private corner of the ballroom. As I got close enough, I heard Jake say, "I promise it won't be much longer. The divorce papers are already being drafted. I'll be free soon." The word free hit me like a physical blow. Lily leaned in and said, "My parents are serious. They can't sign anything with you until it's official. They need a clean break." Jake replied quickly, "I know. I've told them I understand their right to protect their interests. Once everything is finalized, we can move forward with the partnership and everything else." I backed away, my steps slow and deliberate. I slipped into the service corridor, where I pressed my back against the wall. My legs trembled, and I set down the tray before the glasses could fall. I reached into my blazer and pulled out the envelope. The pregnancy confirmation, once a symbol of hope, now felt like a heavy burden. I thought about confronting Jake, but I knew it was too late. He had already made his choice. I folded the envelope and slipped it back into my jacket. I chose silence for now. Back at the apartment, I was in a state of shock. But beneath the shock, a sense of resolve began to form. I entered Jake's office, a place that once felt like a shared dream, but now felt cold and sterile. I switched on the desk lamp and started going through the folders. I found some suspicious contracts and payments. There were payments to consulting firms with no verifiable information and clients tied to scandals. I pulled out my phone and started researching. It became clear that Jake's agency wasn't just doing PR. It was involved in reputation laundering, covering fraud, and selling silence. Hidden beneath a stack of reports, I found handwritten notes with instructions for creating fake testimonials and burying negative search results. This was corruption, and Jake had built his rising star image on it. I quietly photographed every document. I knew that if the Thompsons ever saw this evidence, they would cut ties with Jake immediately. It gave me a sense of control, something I hadn't felt since the ballroom. 2 days later, I decided to take action. I disguised myself as a business consultant named Ella and visited the Thompson model agency. I spoke with Mrs. Thompson, Lily's mother. I hinted at the unethical practices of a certain advertising agency without naming names. I could see the suspicion in her eyes. I had planted the first seed of doubt. Then, I requested a private meeting with Mr. Thompson. He agreed, and I met him at his real estate headquarters. I showed him the evidence I had collected. He was furious. He ordered his assistant to confirm every detail. When the assistant returned and confirmed that everything was true, Mr. Thompson said, "Jake has been deceiving my daughter and trying to ride our family's name to legitimacy." I told him that I wanted 2 things. First, Jake to face the legal consequences of his actions, and second, financial security for my unborn child. Mr. Thompson nodded and said, "You have my attention and my cooperation. The downfall begins now." 3 days later, the storm hit Jake's agency. IRS agents and the Department of Revenue arrived, demanding access to his financial records. His employees were in a panic and clients started leaving. Jake was clueless about what was happening. He tried to call Lily, but she didn't answer. When he drove to the Thompson estate, he was refused entry. As the days passed, Jake's world continued to crumble. His agency was on the verge of collapse, and he was facing federal charges. Eventually, he accepted a plea deal and was sentenced to federal prison. Throughout this ordeal, I found support in an unexpected place.
Dr.
Ryan, my fertility specialist, reached out after hearing about my situation. He had been with me through the darkest days of my infertility journey. He offered me support during my pregnancy, no strings attached. We started meeting for coffee, and he never asked about Jake. Instead, he asked about my well-being. He became a steady presence in my life. He drove me to prenatal appointments, helped me assemble a crib, and left fresh fruit at my door when I was nauseous. When my labor began, I called him without hesitation. He was by my side through every contraction. And when my son, Ethan, was born, Ryan was the first to place a gentle hand on his back. My life has changed so much. I'm no longer the woman who was betrayed and heartbroken. I'm a mother, and I have a newfound sense of peace. Jake is a part of my past, a chapter that is now closed. And I'm looking forward to a future filled with love and hope for me and Ethan.